Hey everyone, welcome to lesson 3 here in February. I wanted to dive into some rhythm study today, and I figured we'd do it within the process that I've kind of already laid out in some previous lessons. But I really want to focus today on being able to build a rhythmic groove and work on it within the context of hearing the metronome in different places than the typical place. So I was trying to think of a pattern, and a pattern I came up with would be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. So that would be like two bars of this, right? And yeah, I wanted to find something that maybe moves in maybe a way where it's like we have a pattern, and then the next pattern doesn't start on 1; it starts 1. So that's the kind of stuff that, especially when you're dealing with hearing the metronome in different places, it gets less and less easy to remember the pattern, because normally, especially in Western music, we're relating everything to like being right on the downbeat of the quarter note. So the way I want to work on this is I'm going to put a metronome on, let's see what BPM this is. This is like 70 beats per minute. And, there's a few different ways to start. I'm not going to start with every 16th note being given. This is just quarter notes. But what I really want to do, before we even dive into the harder stuff, is just kind of see how this sits in a metronome, right? Just see if we can play it along. So 2, ready, go. And you'll notice, like, when I'm doing that pattern, that like I'm trying to aim for that 2, 2, 1, and 2, right? And so something about patterns like this that are kind of like 16th note heavy and you're playing a lot of moving parts is that sometimes, I don't know, to me it feels overwhelming sometimes to try and line up every 16th. But if I aim, like if I know what's going to hit the quarter note and I aim for that, then lining up the 16th notes gets a little easier, because I have like a baseline thing I'm aiming for, right? So if I'm counting this out, like 1 E and 2 E and 1, or 1 E and 2. So there's it's 1 and then 2. I think that D is on the 3, so 1 E, 2 E and 3, 4, and then there's nothing on 4. So as we're playing this, 1, 2. Like that would be on the 3, right? So let's try this again and really think about hitting those 3 things. So we're going to go 1 E and a 2 and 3, right? 1 E and a 1 E and a 2, 3, off. And the second part of the pattern for 1, that F lines up. So it's the F and the G, so G, and then this B flat C F combo. So there's the things that we're going to really focus on lining up. Start again. One more time. Okay, now you have some options with how you move forward from something like this. So I'm not going to do a true follow along lesson here, in that I would do this each step of the way. But the next thing I would do, when you're doing something rhythmic like this, you basically want to sit on one particular pattern or way of practice until it just seems like you're nailing it, and the best way I can describe that is you just feel like you have it, right? It's kind of this subjective experience in terms of like, well, I feel like I'm lining up. I don't feel like I'm struggling to hit any of these particular beats. And then, obviously, because that's a subjective thing in terms of like how we're experiencing the quarter note, you know, we can kind of find ways to test how well we know it, right? So there's a couple ways. So, you know, one way you could, if you really wanted to tighten up 16ths, like once you feel familiar with the pattern, you could go through and, let's see if I can do this here. You just add in, you know, all of the six. So now we're hearing every 16th. So. So you can kind of tell, you know, you can kind of tell there where you're in, where you're not. The other option, and this is the one I'm going to focus on today as I turn all those other metronome notes off. Is, and we've covered this in the past, I believe, I think it was one of the previous rhythm videos, where you start trying to hear the metronome in a different place. So there's some options there, and by hearing it in a different place, I mean, like when you hear a metronome, you're thinking, most people are thinking 1, 2, 3, 4. They're thinking the quarter note is there, right? And what I want to do is actually highlight a different part of the beat, just to, you know, really bring some focus to something that I wasn't being given before, right? And again, the reason we're doing this is because, as I've mentioned in earlier kind of grid rhythmic videos, the more you understand all of the beats around you, including the ones that you're not playing, the easier it's going to be to line everything up, because you're going to have so much more context of, like, you know, if you just practice along to quarter notes, you really only understand quarter notes and how you feel relative to them. But if you start practicing hearing other things, you start getting used to other things, and you get, you know, you have kind of more perspective. So the first way that I go a lot of times is I start thinking of this as a half note, right? Or sorry, as like the and. So it'd be, rather than 1, 2, 3, I'm thinking and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3. So there it's, you know, again, same beat per minute, same amount of hints, but now I'm feeling it on a different part of the beat. So I want to approach this practice. I'm gonna play the same thing, same exact pattern to this, but now I'm gonna focus on, like, see if I can make this feel the exact same way as I did when I was playing with the quarter note on the 1, right? So we'll start this. 3, 4, 1, 2, same thing, go. And you're already seeing that different notes are lining up with different parts of the metronome, right? Like even if we start from the beginning, like now the C is lining up, and there's nothing on the second beat, right? So then it's like this, the third C of the pattern, and then the first D that comes up. So I want to really make sure I focus on lining up the things that are being lined up with what I'm hearing metronome wise, if that makes sense. Okay, so again, you do this kind of process. You can do it at multiple beats per minute too. Like if you want to sit with each of these in kind of increments of 5. Again, I think this was, yeah, it's 70 beats per minute. So you could do this at 70, at 75, 80, 85. You could keep going upwards. You could also keep going down. Like this thing gets super, super tough. You know, like if you go down, this is 50, for instance. Even that, like doing the and, 2, and. Like weirdly enough, getting slower makes it just as hard. Right, so you can go in a number of different directions there. Just kind of a sort of advanced tip here, something I didn't necessarily think about, I don't think, in the earlier videos, but something that I pay a lot of attention to when I'm doing this sort of rhythmic study. And this is going to sound crazy, but I pay just as much attention to, in fact, I probably pay more attention to when I release the note as the rhythmic figure gets harder, as the metronome stuff gets harder. So even with, you know, if I put this on the and again, so 2, and this is back at 70 beats per minute. So 3 and 4. If I go like just the first couple notes, like I've noticed even that like the release ends up being in time. So it's like 1 E and 2 and, or 1 E and 2 E. 1 E and 2 E and 1 E. Like you notice how I'm timing. It's like you can almost hear the key. Like you can hear the coming off, the release of the keyboard as a beat. And those kind of like really small details as you're working on 16th note rhythmic grids can, I mean, to be honest, they can really save your butt a lot of this stuff. Because again, they're giving you more things to latch onto, more context. And that's what we try and build with this. We're trying to build more understanding and more context. And if you're paying attention to what you play and the release, I mean, even if you play eighth notes, it's so much easier to play eighth notes that are in time this way if I'm paying attention to the release as a rhythmic piece rather than just like there I only have, or you know, it's like doubling the amount of things that I can line up to, right? So that's kind of a useful tip here. So now the last piece of the puzzle would be if we did the same thing, and again, we did this in a previous video, but if you can find a way to hear the rhythmic grid as either the E or the in a 16th. So if I'm thinking, for those of you that don't know, if I'm thinking 16th note beats as like 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4. A lot of times teachers will use E and to kind of like enunciate the 16th note rhythm. So if I'm hearing this, like I'll play it normally. So this is the metronome, 2 E and 3 E and actually let me slow it down. I'm gonna go, this is like 55 beats per minute. So this would be 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and right? If I can find a way to hear those beats that I'm being given as the E, then I feel like this type of rhythmic study is where you really start getting into the fine details of being able to play like really, really precise stuff. Again, because this is context that a lot of people, especially in Western music, don't have. Like we don't have this focus on the E and the because a lot of our music is very quarter note driven, very like 1, 2, 4, 4 on the floor kind of things like that. So being able to feel it like this, honestly, it can be a little tricky. So, what I recommend is, first of all, just try it. And the way to try and start it without practicing up to it that I like to do is I'll listen to it and I'll kind of say like E, do, E and 2, E and 3, E. It's almost like I'm kind of like verbally trying to say the 16th thing. So E and 2, E and and then if you can play along to it like that, try and give it a shot. I'm noticing, by the way, that as I'm hearing E and 2 E and I start to like kick my knee. So I hear this and my leg is going. So I'm creating the context that I am not being given by the metronome. So let's just try it without the 16th notes being given to us. So E and 1, E and 2, E and ready, go. E and and you'll notice that pause, the pause in the middle, the like where I go 3, 4, 1. That pause becomes so much harder now because now we're at least in my mind, I'm focusing so extensively on trying to keep the quarter note that I have to remember that the next part of the pattern isn't the same as the first part of the pattern. E and 3, E and 4, E and Okay, so again, you can work on that, and again, I recommend like working on this until you're feeling like you're not reaching for it. You're feeling like you can sit into it easily. Not everyone, including myself, when I first started doing this, it was incredibly hard for me to even get started with the metronome on the E, right? So something that I like to do, if you have a metronome that can have accents, this is like kind of a tip to train yourself, at least like to kind of train yourself to start hearing where the E is in context of a bunch of other 16ths. So here's a sequence that has accents, right? So we have this, normally, you know, you're thinking 1 E and 2 E and, but let's actually flip this and E and 2 E and 3, 4 E and so now again, you have the full context, you're just hearing that accent. So 1 E, 2 E, ready, go. Sorry, my video cut out for a second. Anyway, that's a very good way to kind of like ease yourself into this practice. So try those things out. You know, let me know if you have any sort of struggle with it. Throw comments in the comments section. And again, don't be afraid to, when you're working on these rhythmic drills, like be able to really like take some time in each tempo until you're comfortable. You know, like a lot of these drills, especially syncopated things that are moving along, they're difficult to do, and so it's going to take a lot of muscle memory to kind of feel how you're supposed to feel as you're working on them. So throw your questions in the comments. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and I'll catch y'all next time. Cheers, y'all.